Hey everyone, welcome back to Wix Fix. I hope you're having a fantastic day. My name is Ryan, and today's video is another episode of our e-commerce series. For today's video, we are going to be designing a custom product page. So instead of it looking like this, which is Wix's default product page in Wix, we're going to be transforming it and making it look a lot cleaner and a lot cooler in this custom way inside of Wix Studio. Now, just like with the custom shop page, in today's video, we're just going to be focusing on building the design. In future episodes of this series, we're going to be bringing on Itan from the Wix Wiz, who is a Velo master, and he'll be able to actually make this design actually functional. I know this is what a lot of you have been requesting for a very, very long time, and I want to apologize that it's taken so long to actually make this series, but I am not a Velo master like Itan, so finding out how to do it myself was near impossible, but Itan, he'll be able to do it in the next several videos of the series, so be sure you are subscribed so you can follow along. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Now, if you've been following along with this series, you're probably already kind of familiar with the section layout design. The first thing I always do is add 10% padding to the left and the right of every single section. And then for the top and bottom, I've been adding 5% padding, just like that. Now for this section right here, what we're going to do is split this into two columns. So we're just going to choose this option right here, and it's going to split this into two cells. I do want to add a gap here, so we're going to add a 5 VW gap, and we're also going to kind of move this over here slightly, just like this. Perfect. Over here on the left-hand side, we're going to have our images. So what I want to do first is actually go to Quick Add, and we're going to add a container. For this container, let's go ahead and stretch it, and we're going to remove our background color. For this container, let's add a CSS grid, and we're going to split this into a 2x1. Now, I do want this to be kind of small, so what we're going to do is basically set this to 0.5 FR for this first column, and then 1.5 FR for the second one. And let's go ahead and add like a 24 pixel gap here in between, and I think that looks pretty clean. In this left column, what I want to do is add a repeater. So let's go ahead and add this repeater right here. We'll go ahead and stretch it. And of course, we don't want this to take up the entirety of the container. We just want this in the left column. And I don't want 3 items per row. So what we're going to do is set items per row to 1. And for the grid gaps, we're going to set this to 24 pixels. Perfect. Now what I will say is with this column width, what we're going to do is switch this over to a viewport value. This is 11.7 VW. So let's grab this item in the repeater, and we're going to set the height to 11.7 VW. And it's going to look something like this, and it looks pretty clean. Now, for this, I do want to remove the background color, and inside of it, let's go ahead and add an image. So we'll head to Media, Show More, let's select a product, and we'll just choose this one right here. Now, of course, we need to resize this quite a bit, and we're going to drag this into the repeater item. And once it's here, let's go ahead and stretch it. Let's go ahead and add another image really quickly. We'll go to products, and I want to add the product shadow. So let's go ahead and resize this. We'll add this to the repeater, and we'll stretch it. Now in the layers panel, let's go ahead and make sure the shadow is below the actual product image, because we don't want the shadow to appear on top. It looks a little bit weird. But once we are good with that, what I'll then do is grab the product image. Let's go to border. Let's add like a 2 pixel border, and we'll make it our accent color. And for the corners, let's go ahead and round this to like 24 pixels, something that looks like that. Now what I will say is, in the code, Itan is going to make it so that the image that's currently selected is going to have the border, and these other images are not going to have a border if they are not selected. But for now, we will go ahead and just leave this in the design. What I now want to do is go ahead and grab both of these images. I'm going to copy them, and I'm going to paste them inside of this grid cell. I'm going to grab this image, and I'm going to stretch it. For this image, I do want to remove the border, so I'm just going to remove the border completely. And with this shadow image, once again, we'll go ahead and stretch it, and we'll make sure that under the layers panel, it's behind the image. So we'll just go ahead and switch it just like that. And last but not least, here in this section, let's go ahead and add a little container. We'll stretch this container and we'll make sure that the color is our background color. And for corners, maybe we'll choose like 64. Perfect. And let's go ahead and move this behind the image, and we should have something that looks like this. And I think this looks really, really clean. Oops, I think I messed something up. I accidentally added another cell. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and undo that. Perfect. And this is what we should be left with. And I think it looks really, really clean. Over here for the right-hand side, let's go ahead and start by adding our little label. So if an item is on sale or it's new, we're gonna want to have something to kind of showcase that. So what I'm gonna do is just add a container. Inside of this container, I'm gonna add a heading 6. Let's go ahead and change the text to new. We're gonna set the responsive behavior to hug, and I'm just going to center it inside of this container really quickly. For the text size, I'm going to turn off scaling text, and we're going to set this to 13 pixels. We're also going to just go ahead and change this to a bolder font. It looks a little bit cleaner. Let's change the color to like our accent color. And now let's go ahead and start working on the container. For this container, we're going to set the background color to a lighter version of our accent color. So we'll go ahead and choose this. For the border, let's go ahead and set the color to our accent color, and we'll set a 2 pixel width. And for the corners, let's set this to 999. So now we have a completely rounded container here. If we keep scrolling down, let's go ahead and add some padding. So for the top and bottom, let's add 6 pixels. And for the left and right hand side, we'll add 12 pixels. Great. Now if we scroll up all the way to the top, let's go ahead and turn on the advanced sizing. And for the width, we'll set this to maximum content. And for the height, we'll just go ahead and bring this as low as we possibly can. And the height will readjust to our proper size. But now that we have this complete, let's go ahead and send this to the top left, just like that. And now let's go ahead and add a heading 1 right here. This is going to have the product name. Now, of course, we don't need it to be this big. So let's see what like 42 looks like. I think that looks pretty good. And let's go ahead and set this to hug, and we'll send it to the left. And let's go ahead and put it somewhat right underneath that little label. Great. Underneath that, let's go ahead and create like a little skew. So what we're going to do is place some text here. We're going to change it to hug, send it to the left. And for this text element, we're going to change this to skew. And what I will say is for this, I really don't want it to be any bigger than 13 pixels. And we'll go ahead and choose like a bolder font as well. So we'll do Montserrat bold. Perfect. Let's go ahead and copy this text and we'll paste it. For this text, let's go ahead and change this to like Montserrat medium. And I'm just going to create a fake number as a fake skew. And we'll place this right next to our skew text. Let's grab both of these items and we'll stack them together. And with this stack, we'll go ahead and place this really close to the product name. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and start working on the price. So I'm going to do a heading 6 or heading 5. I'm going to change this to like $50. I'm going to change this to a bolder font. Just like before, we're going to set this to scale from scale proportionately to hug. And we'll go ahead and send it to the left. Now let's copy and paste this text. And for this text, we'll move it right next to the other price. And for this one, maybe we'll set this to $40. And for this $50 text element here, let's go ahead and change the text to like a gray color, and we'll add the little strike through. And maybe we can even make this a bit smaller. So let's do like 22 pixels. So let's go ahead and bring this just right about there. And we'll grab both of these text elements, we'll stack them together. So this would be like the on sale price. And then the $40 would be what the current price is. I think that looks pretty good. But if you've been following along with this series, you may know that in the first episode, we created products with specific variations. So what we're going to want to do is if a product with variations is selected, or a user goes to a page where that product has different variations, we're going to want to have a way for them to choose which variation they want to view. So what we're going to do is come over to add. We'll do quick add, and let's just add a repeater here. Now with this repeater, what I'm going to do is go ahead and make it about this size. I'm going to bring it down quite a bit, and maybe I'll just get rid of 2 of these items for now because we don't really need them. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete 2 of these items. And with the repeater selected, I'm going to set number of items per row from 3 to 2. And we'll also add like a 12 pixel gap in between the items. Perfect. With this item selected, let's remove the background color. And what we're gonna do is just go over to add input, and we're gonna head on over to drop down. So we'll just drag this drop down right here. If you do not see the drop down option here, what you may need to do is come over to the coding panel, press start coding, and you will see the input as an option under your add panel. But for now, let's go into the settings. Let's remove the field title. Let's just for now add a placeholder text that's going to say options. I want to set the height of this dropdown to 52. For the design, let's go into the border and we'll set this to our light gray color. Let's make it 2 pixels. For the corners, I want it completely rounded, so we're going to set it to 999. And for the text, we're going to, of course, do Montserrat bold. And we'll go ahead and do that for the placeholder text as well. Perfect. Now I do want to resize this. And I also, under the settings, I want to use the browser drop-down list instead of the custom one. And we'll also go ahead and adjust the hover state for the design. So for the border, I just want to make sure that this one is set to 2 pixels. We'll go ahead and do that for the focus one as well. And for the air one, let's go ahead and make sure we'll leave this one as red, but we'll make sure the width is a little bit thicker. But I will say for the design on the other two, for focus, I do want to, for focus and hover, I want to make sure that the border is actually kind of like a gray and not a straight black. I just think that looks a little bit nicer. But once we are done, let's go ahead and send this drop down box up to the top. Let's grab this repeater item and we'll remove the height. And I also want to grab the repeater itself. And instead of align items to the center, let's go ahead and align them to the start, and it's going to move it over for us. And I'm just going to expand it just so it fits perfectly here. And I'm going to bring this right underneath the price. Perfect. Underneath that, what we're going to do is basically the same exact thing, but for sizing. So if we're going to have a product with different sizing, then we're going to need a little way for our users to be able to select that as well. So what we're going to do is come over to quick add. Let's drag this repeater out. And we're basically going to be following the same exact steps for this one. Let's just go ahead and delete 2 of these items inside of the repeater. Let's go ahead and make sure that this repeater fills up the space here. For the repeater, I also just want to have 1 thing per row, and we'll just have a vertical gap of 12 pixels. Inside of this, let's remove the background color. And then inside of it, let's go down to add. We'll do input, selection tags, and we'll choose this option right here. So we'll go ahead and add this. Let's send this to the top left, and we'll go ahead and stretch this to be the full width of the repeater. For the choices, I believe we have a 6 ounce, then we have an 8 ounce, and then maybe even a 12 ounce. I will say the code is going to basically add all the options for us. So me doing that really didn't have an impact because some products might not have a 6, 8, or 12 ounce. They might have like an 8 ounce and a 24 ounce. So we're going to want to make sure that the code actually takes care of that for us. But I think for the variation I used, I did use 6, 8, and 12. So I'm just kind of visualizing it here for myself in a way. But for the design, what I want to do is come over to the border. We're going to want to make sure it has this. We're going to want to make sure we choose our light gray color here. Let's go ahead and set the width to 2 pixels. The corners, I like how rounded they are, so we'll actually go ahead and leave that as is. And for the font, let's go ahead and change it to Montserrat bold. And let's also, yeah, I think this looks pretty good. We'll go ahead and leave it at as this color here. Now let's go up to the design and switch this from the regular state to the hover state. And I think this looks actually really good as is. What I will say is for the border, maybe we can just set this to straight black. And let's go over to the selected state and let's set this border to black as well. And then for the air, maybe the background color, we set this to white. For the border, let's set it to our light gray. And maybe for the text color, we also set this to the light gray as well, kind of showing that maybe this one's out of stock and can't be chosen. Perfect. Now let's grab this repeater item. We're going to set the width to 0. And I think that looks pretty good, just like that. Fantastic. And actually, because this stuff is more rounded, I might actually choose the selection tag, go to corners and just round these completely, just so it's a little bit more consistent with our other parts of the design. I do think this looks pretty clean. But underneath that, what I want to do is go ahead and copy the SKU text. I'm going to paste this down below, and we're going to move this right about here. And for this text, let's go ahead and change this to quantity. Perfect. And now let's come over to add, go inputs, and let's do a text input. And we'll just drag this one out right here. Now for this input, what I want to do is go into the settings. We're going to remove the field title. For the type, we'll just set it to a number. For placeholder text, let's just do 1. And under the design, what I want to do is change the border color to our light gray. We'll make it 2 pixels. For the text, of course, we're going to set this to our Montserrat bold font. We'll do the same exact thing for our placeholder text. And then we're going to resize this to be pretty small, something like this. What I will say is it might be nice if the text is in the center. And we're going to place this right next to the quantity option here. Perfect. And now I just need to add an add to cart button. And for our button, I have one on our call to action for every page. So to add the call to action, I'm just going to head on over to our master section and press add to page. Now it adds the section to the top. So all I need to do is head on over to the layer panel and move it underneath. Perfect. Now let's grab this little sign up button. I'm going to paste it in here. And instead of sign up, let's say add to cart. Perfect. And we'll just drag this right next to our quantity option here. And let's make the height of this input the same as our button here, just so it looks a little bit cleaner. Let's also just go ahead and round the edges. That's something I forgot to do. Perfect. And what I'm going to do is stack these together just so that these are tied together. Then with this stack selected, I'm going to stack them horizontally. So now they're kind of their own stack. And I'm going to give them a little bit of space, but then I'm going to grab all of the items inside of this section here, and we'll stack these together. Now that this is stacked together, I'm going to go ahead and center them so that they're in the middle of the cell. And I think that looks really, really, really clean. Now the next section is going to be kind of a way for you to be able to list additional features or details about the product. So for this one, I believe I set the background color to our light pink color. Let's also go ahead and start by adding our padding that we add for every single section here on the website. Perfect. And what we're going to do is split this into 2 cells. And before I forget, let's add a 5 VW gap. For this left cell over here, I just want to have some text that tells the user that these are additional details. But what I'm going to do is actually head on over to the home page, and I'm going to grab this text element here because this is already formatted to my preferred sizing. And then we'll head on back over to our page. I'm going to paste in this text element. I'm going to send it to the top left, and I'm going to change this text to say more information, or you can even say like additional details. And then right here for this cell, I'm just going to add a repeater. For this repeater, let's go ahead and stretch it. I don't want there to be more than 1 item per row, so we'll go ahead and set that here. I'm also going to add like a 42 pixel gap in between each item. And then for the item itself, let's go ahead and start by removing the background color. Inside of this, what I want to do is actually add a container. Let's go ahead and remove the background color from this container. Let's add a 2 pixel border, and we'll make this border black. Let's also go to the corners and we'll make these completely round, just like that. Inside of this, I want to add a little icon. So maybe we can add this little natural icon here. And for this icon, I don't want it to really be responsive for now. So I'm going to go ahead and set this to fixed. And we'll go ahead and set this to like 32 pixels. I think that looks pretty good. And we'll go ahead and center it inside of this container. Then for this container, let's turn on advanced sizing, and we'll change the maximum width, or we'll set the width to maximum width, and we'll go ahead and resize it to something like this. Inside of this, let's add like 2% padding, and we'll apply that to all sides. And what we'll do is we'll expand this down to be a 48 pixel height. So what I'm going to do is actually set, so what I'm going to do with this container is actually change this to a fixed height and size. I want to set the height to 50 pixels and 50 pixels, something that looks like this. Then we'll send this to the top left of this container. Perfect. Next to that, what we're going to do is we're going to have a text element. Now with this text element, just like we've been doing before, we're going to set the response behavior to hug, and I'm going to move this to be like right next to the icon. And I'm going to change this one to natural, and I'm going to add a little paragraph text underneath it. Let's align them together. I am going to expand this to fill the rest of the box. And what I will say is for this text, I want the maximum to be like 16 and the minimum to be like 13. I think that looks pretty clean. And I'm going to grab both of these text elements. We'll stack them together. Then with this stack selected, we'll use the shift key and grab this item or the icon, and then we'll stack these together as well. Perfect. And last but not least, I'll go ahead and grab the item itself, remove the height. So now we should have a section that looks like this, and it's just going to be a list of different like information about the product. So when Etan comes in here, he'll show you how to like make this work and make it look really nice. But for now, we're just going to move on with the design. The next thing we are going to work on is going to be like, let's say you have a video for your product. So maybe you want to display that video in a nice way here on the page. So we're going to add 10% margin on the left and right, and 5% margin on the right, on the top and the bottom. Perfect. Let's go ahead and expand this down a little bit more. And inside of this, we're just going to add a very simple video box. So we'll head over to media, press video box. We'll drag this one out here. Let's go ahead and expand it. Let's also add a little bit of contour. So we'll go ahead and round the edges to maybe like 64. I think that looks pretty clean. And we'll go ahead and change the video here as well. Now for this next section, I want to create like a review section. But what I will say is for today's video and for this area in this mini series, I want to keep it very basic. In the future, I'm going to add to this series by making a more complex review system. But for today's video, we're just going to keep it very, very simple. To do this, what we're going to do is just go up to quick add, and we'll just add a container. Let's go ahead and stretch this container. For the background color, let's make it white. For the border, let's make it our accent color, and we'll make it 2 pixels. For the corners, let's set the radius to 64, and let's expand this down just a little bit for now. Now with this container selected, I do want to add some padding. So maybe we do something like 1.6 VW, see what that gives us. Okay, that might not be enough. Let's see what 5 VW does. Okay, let's see what that looks like if we apply it to all sides. Okay, I think that should do. Inside of this, what I want to do is add a CSS grid, and we're going to split this into a 2x1 grid, just like that. And for the grid gap, let's add a 5 VW gap. Perfect. In this left-hand side, let's go ahead and add an image really quick. And this could be an image of your user using the product, or it can just be another image of the product. It really doesn't matter. It's completely up to you. But what I will say is because I added a 64 pixel radius to the outer container, for the inner container, I'm going to do 32, which is half, and it just looks a little bit cleaner just like that. For this right column, I want to add a little decorative piece. So we're going to come over to decorations, more basic shapes. I'm going to type in quote, and this is not quite what I'm looking for. So I'm going to press all results, and we're going to choose this option right here. Let's go ahead and move this into its column. Let's resize this, and we'll place this in the top left. Let's also make it our accent color. Perfect. Then below that, let's go ahead and add a paragraph text. For this paragraph text, we're going to send it to the left, middle, and we're going to expand this all the way across this section or its column. But for this one, we're going to set the font size to like 36. Okay, maybe that's a little bit too big. Let's do like 28. I think that looks pretty good. And let's go ahead and grab these. We'll stack these together. And I believe what we're going to do is go ahead and add like a 15% margin on the bottom. We might need to make that a little bit bigger in a minute, but what we're going to do next or last here for this section is let's add a heading 6. For this heading, we're going to set this to hug and we'll send it to the left. Of course, it's in the wrong column or grid cell, so we're going to send it to the right grid cell and we're going to send it to the bottom. And this is just going to be the person's name who bought it. And let's grab this stack here. Let's go back down to padding and let's do like 25% padding. The reason we are adding this margin here is because we want to make sure that if the review is really, really long, that it never kind of interferes with the person's name. So if the review is really, really long, which I can kind of simulate this by copying and pasting this a couple times, you'll notice that it's pushing the entire section down and making the entire section longer, as opposed to if I didn't have padding here, like or margin here, I can just remove this. You can see the person's name kind of gets lost behind this stack. So by adding the 25% margin to the bottom, it's protecting this person's name and keeping a good amount of space in between it. So I think that just looks a little bit nicer. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and replace the text, make it what it was before, and now we can go ahead and move on. For this last section here on the page, we are going to be making kind of like a related products section here. So similar to what we've been doing for every single section, is we're going to add 10 padding to the left and right and 5 padding to the top and bottom. Once we have that, what we're going to do is go ahead and add 2 rows here. And we'll also add a 5 VW vertical gap. And for this top grid cell, all I want to do is grab this more information text. Let's go ahead and paste it here. We'll send it to the top left and we're going to change this to related products. Perfect. Once we have that complete, we can go ahead and resize this section. Underneath this, I just want to have a repeater with the different products listed. However, I've already kind of created that here in the previous design episode of the series. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab this repeater. We're going to copy it and we're just going to bring it over. When you have a design that you really, really like and you plan to use it on other areas of the website, you should never have a problem with just copying and pasting it. That way the design is the same, the parameters that you set are all the same. But once we copy this in, let's go ahead and set the height of the section to 0. And you can see that didn't work for some reason. So what we need to do is see if something is kind of preventing us from changing the height here. And it looks like there was margin tied to the top and bottom. So we just need to remove the margin that was randomly applied to this repeater. And there you go. So here is going to be our custom product page built here in Wix Studio for our e-commerce website. Again, none of this is functional whatsoever. Etan from the WixWiz YouTube channel is going to be coming in, creating several episodes teaching you step by step how to actually make this functional. But that's basically going to wrap it up for today's video. If you all did enjoy, please consider giving this video a like and subscribing to the channel so you don't miss out on the future episodes of the series. Thank you all again, and I will see you on the next one.